So the opening line of the book of Yoga is a very rich line, and perhaps one can keep on talking about it for days and days, and yet one may not arrive at the deep sense of faith. We shall count it Narad to come from paradise to Ashupati's Mathura. Let us anyway read a few connected lines before we can really make any beginning. Fate followed her foreseen immutable road. Man's hopes and longings wheel yearning wheels that bear the body of destiny and lead his blind will towards an unknown goal. His fate within him shapes his acts and rules. His face and form are already born in him. His parentage is in his secret soul. Here, matter seems to mold the body's life, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his previous choice. Nature and fate compel man's previous choice. But greater spirits this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of its fate. The entire psychological condition of meeting the challenge of fate is described very succinctly in these two lines. Man's fate within him shapes his acts and rules. Man's hopes and longings build the learning wheels. According to the Mahabharata, fate is an all-powerful agency. It is fate which will make man do what he must do. He is bound to his fate. Yet, it also asserts that fate cannot operate, cannot be effective, cannot carry out the intended purpose unless there is the participation of man in it. Man has to be an instrument of fate. Fate is ineffective if he does not come forward. Now, this is a deep metaphysical issue, whether it is fate which governs man's actions, or it is due to man's action that fate operates and does what must be done. There can be endless discussion around it, but let us see a few possibilities. See, what is fate? The word fate has a Latin origin. Fatum utterance. Patrun utterance. That is the decree of fate. What is spoken by fate? It is that which must happen. So, fate becomes really powerful there. According to the Greek mythology, even the gods are subject to the rules of fate. Anarchy, necessity, they must obey her, even the gods. They don't have absolute free will. They are the instruments of what is destined, and they must operate to carry out what is intended by anarchy, by necessity, by fate. Of course, we say fate in various contexts as karma, my fate, my karma, as we say, or we say kismat. Well, this is what is to happen, it has happened. We say chance, by coincidence, by unknown circumstances, things have happened, and therefore we call it fate. We say it is luck. We say it is destiny. We also say it is doom. All these are variations in different shades of meaning. In the Indian tradition, Indian metaphysics, Indian concept of the working of secret powers of nature and gods and the occult forces, we have Bhagya, fortune, we have Niyati, order and rule, we have Purushakar, what man must do, that is Purushakar. We have Daiva, what is determined by God, by providential forces, Daiva. We have Prarabdha, things which have to happen irrespective of our actions. We have karma. All these are interrelated. Bhagya yoga, that is a common phrase which is used. The yoga of fortune, the arrival of various forces at a given point to mold a given event, or lucky juncture, that is Bhagya yoga, you see. In fact, according to the Indian tradition, the life of man is divided into 4 parts: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Now all these things have their own fortunes, destinies, their own role to play in life. In the Greek mythology, there are 3 goddesses: Clotho, Takasis, Atrobos, conveying birth, life, death. We are all ruled by these, and there is hardly anything we can do in this regard. The dictionary defines fate as inevitable destiny or necessity. Now, it is that inevitable destiny which had driven Savitri in the early course of her life, before she had started her yoga. Even her meeting with Satyavan was kind of chance meeting. In the sense that she was going from place to place, from town to town, from country to country, in search of a life partner. She found none suitable to her. Eventually, as she was traversing through the Selva woods, she saw at a distance a figure of a youth, bright, shining, lustrous, and she would have just kind of ignored him and moved on in her chariot. She would have missed the occasion. But God touched in time. That is what the poet says. But God touched in time. And the miracle was accomplished. She looks at this youth intently, deeply, carefully. And suddenly, she has recognized in him one with whom she had been through lives. Yes, here it is. I have found him. So here also, although there is an age-old identity between Savitri and Satyavan, it is God who touched in time. It is chance which has capitalized that things must happen now. Fate worked in a kind of an absolute sense, and things were done. So that is how fate had accomplished her miracle of bringing the two lovers together, because it is through that the destiny of mankind, their own destiny of course, the destiny of mankind, the destiny of evolution, the destiny of the soul of earth is what is going to be fixed. So these are far-reaching implications. Now it is this road on which Savitri had met Satyavan. We could say that it is she who had foreseen this road. Destiny accomplished miracle of bringing them together, and because it is destiny who has brought them together, therefore it is an immutable road also. So fate followed her foreseen immutable road. Her foreseen immutable road could be Savitri, who had already seen this road when she met Satyavan. It is that road which she is following now again. She is following once more that road, foreseen at the time of meeting each other. So that is one way of looking at it. We are saying that the road was foreseen by Narad. We could also say that in the storyline, it is Savitri herself who had foreseen this road, and now she is taking it once more to go to the hermitage to live with Satyavan. But much more than that is the fixation of all these events in the life of the special ones in the transcendent. The soul of Satyavan is in the grip of death. If he has to be relieved, if the soul has to be released from death, Savitri must take birth, mortal birth. So that is already fixed there. She takes mortal birth. She must meet Satyavan. That is already fixed. So the destiny is already laid out in the transcendent, and it is now being kind of worked out in details on the human scene. The template is already prepared in the luminous heaven, and now it is that template being worked out to produce the necessary details of operation on a human scale, in the human plane. So that is how fate followed her, foreseeing a beautiful road is linked up in all the directions. It could be Narad, it could be Savitri, it could be the transcendental will which has really done all those things. Yet, in order that the transcendental will operates here, human Savitri has to go through the whole process. Fate cannot be fulfilled without human action. That is what Mahabharata says. Fate cannot be fulfilled without human action. Savitri has to undergo through all the stages. That things do happen here according to what has been already fixed up. It could be in the occult, it could be in the spiritual, it could be the transcendent, wherever. Human instrument is required for the action. And that is what Savitri as human incarnate supreme is undergoing in her life. She has already found love, which is because God touched in time on the human scale and the human level. Otherwise, she would have simply ignored him and passed on, moved on. After all, on the way, in the jungle, the forest, there are all kinds of people, all kinds of places she was seeing, and there is no special reason that should give special attention to this youth. You see, something happened, something opened in her soul, and the matter was over at once. In the same way, Narad's coming was also, we might say, an act of supreme fate. But fate, with the knowledge of things, of events, Narad has the knowledge of things which are moving in various directions. He has the deep sense of fate, and he has the knowledge of all three divisions of time, the Kala Drishti, as we said, and therefore he must come. Now the question which arises is, Narad comes, of course, he tells in a very blunt manner that 1 year after the marriage, Satyavan is going to die. And things will happen as have been planned, so to say, by fate, with the human action of Savitri and all the associated people around her. But suppose, for the sake of argument, had Narad not come, would this knowledge of Satyavan's death be known, given to Savitri? Would she have known about his death at all? We say that she would not have known about his death. She would have simply died 1 year after the marriage. It is not that Narad is going to fix the date of Satyavan. He is destined to die 1 year after the marriage. But Savitri now would not have that knowledge that he is to die 1 year after the marriage. In that position, in that condition, in that situation, Savitri would not have been ready to meet death. She would not have prepared herself yogically to take the challenge, to accept the challenge. It is only by doing yoga that the divine Shakti, the divine power entered into her soul, and it is that which came out when she was face to face with death. Now, this would not have happened if she did not have the knowledge in advance of Satyavan's death. So, in that sense, Narad's coming here is extremely crucial, is extremely significant, is loaded with deep occult sense that not only does he come and tell about this particular event, it is by that action she now is ready to meet death. Yogically, she prepares herself for that particular purpose. As we have been saying, Narad has given her Diksha. Narad has indirectly initiated Savitri on the path of yoga. She is set now on the path of yoga. All these things might not have happened had Narad not come. And the present birth of Savitri would not have really achieved for which she had incarnated herself. That would have also meant the incompleteness in a certain sense of Ashwapati's own yoga. She had invoked Divine Mother, she had compelled her to take a mortal birth. She is here now, and in the absence of this knowledge, she would not have been successful. So all these things are now again getting linked up with some kind of a divine fate which is tying all these things together. Ashwapati is coming here, a direct emanation of the Supreme. He is doing Yoga Tapasya for long 18 years. Ashwapati's birth, Savitri's birth, her meeting Satyavan, Narad's making the announcement of the death, Savitri yogically preparing herself and eventually conquering death. These are all tied one in single action of fate. In fact, it cannot be proper to say that it is fate, it is divine logic. It is rhythm, truth in its dynamism, truth in the moment of time which is unfolding here. The power of truth, of rhythm, it is which is operating throughout. It prepares its own conditions, its own circumstances, its own individuals. And when one identifies one's will with the will of the Supreme, in which this truth dynamism moves, then there is a definite success. Ashwapati had identified his will with the will of the Supreme, with the will of the Divine Mother herself, and it demanded of her that she must take human birth. It happened. Savitri is also going to identify her will with the will of the Supreme and yet exercise her individual choice that this must happen. I want Satyavan not for myself. For myself I don't need him because we have been always together. So there is a question of wanting him in that sense. I want Satyavan for the soul or the earth. That is the will Savitri has exercised as an individual by identifying it with the will of the Supreme. And when these two wills meet, then it is in that truth dynamism that things unfold. Logos the supreme dynamism, rhythm, it is that which then operates and brings the inevitability of its results. This is exactly what happened in the case of Savitri. So, when we say that fate followed her, forcing a beautiful room, it is the supreme logos, the truth consciousness force, the divine will in dynamic time. It is that which is operating and carrying out all these events in time here in the mortal world. In order that supreme will return becomes effective here, human action is needed. The human action is provided by Ashwapati. He doing the yoga tapasya. Human action is provided by Savitri by again doing yoga tapasya, identifying herself with the Divine Mother, embodying her force in her soul, and then things happen on a much smaller scale. It is that which happened in the Kurukshetra war. Arjuna had identified his will with the will of Purushottama. Then the action becomes successful. He had given up hope. He was in a mood of dejection. He had refused to fight. He did not want to pick up his bow and arrow and shoot the enemy. When that weight of ignorance was removed from his soul with the Divine Himself, then the human action became luminous, godly, to serve the purpose of Purushottama Himself. Arjuna became victorious. In the same way, Savitri, of course, has become victorious on a much larger scale, on a universal scale, that it is for the sake of the soul of the earth that she is fighting. And she has accomplished that mission by carrying out a yoga. So it is that immutable road which she followed and reached the goal, reached the objective, had full realization of the purpose for which she had incarnated herself here. That is what was accomplished by her most successfully. And it is that we should see in the book of yoga how she carried out the yoga in the course of time and became the instrument of the divine power on earth here. She always had the protection of Durga in every moment, in every circumstance of her life. But now a conscious will has awoken in her, and that conscious will of the individual, the conscious will of the Supreme, gives her the power of Durga, the protection of Durga, the victory of Durga. That is what Savitri achieves eventually. Yes, last few times we have been looking at the opening line itself from various angles. Fate followed her, forcing the beautiful road. The beauty of poetry is that one single sentence could imply several shades of meaning, several associations, several depths of thought, of feelings, even of action. In contrast to that, in prose, we had normally very precise, straightforward, direct statement. In poetry, the subjective element, the element of association of words, meanings, of our background, of our development, upbringing, culture, civilization, history, everything gets associated. So when we say fate followed her, forcing immutable road, we are saying that it is fate who is following her own road. We are saying that fate is following the road chalked out for Savitri. We are saying that fate followed the road which was indicated by Narad. All these are permissible interpretations in poetry. In one single sentence, all these possibilities get opened out, which is not the case in prose. Now the question is, why does the poet begin with this kind of a statement? Well, let us read the passage again, those few lines with which the Book of Yoga opens. Fate followed her, forcing immutable road. Man's hopes and longings build the journeying wheels that bear the body of his destiny and lead his blind will towards an unknown goal. His fate within him shapes his acts and rules. His face and form are already born in him. His parentage is in his secret soul. Here, matter seems to know the body is alive, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his free will's choice. But greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of his fate. So essentially, we hear three major themes. How an ordinary man, a common man, meets fate, faces fate, and operates in the framework of his build-up and all the natural forces. Normally, what happens in this case is he is led by blind will towards an unknown goal. Within him, when there is some kind of an advance, progress, element of spiritual possibility, then he can to some extent mold his fate. Yet he is mostly bound by his nature, by his svabhava, and he takes all the events of life in stride of time, and therefore he is led by his blind will towards an unknown goal of which he has no knowledge, no inkling, no idea, no destination is in sight for him. Man's hopes and longings build the journeying wheels that bear the body of his destiny and lead his blind will towards an unknown goal. His fate within him shapes and acts and rules. His fate within him shapes his acts and rules. So although he is led by a blind will, there is something within him, yet unknown to him, which shapes his actions, his rules and regulations, his habits, his responses towards things. His face and form already are born in him. His face and form already are born in him. Now here we see immediately that his fate within him, that fate is neutral. Its face, the face of fate and form already are born in him. It is already present in him, and according to that fate, things happen in his life. His parentage is in his secret soul. Although he is molded by his nature, by his character, by his upbringing, he has no svabhava, and it is the svabhava which governs his actions. Yet the svabhava itself has its origin in the depths of his soul. It is his soul which tries to express itself through all the actions of nature. And therefore, the parentage of this fate, of his actions, of his movements, is in the depths of his soul. His parentage is in the sacred soul. Here, matter seems to mold the body's life, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Soul, Purusha, has lent himself to the action of nature, and therefore it allows nature to work in her own way. Of course, nature does not work without his sanction. He is the Anumanta, he is the giver of sanction. And only when the sanction comes does Prakriti work. Therefore, although the soul is there behind, it is nature who acts and gives rise to all the events in the life of man. And the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his free will's choice. Prakriti and Niyati, nature and fate, they are the ones who govern the choice of man. He has, really speaking, no free will. He is bound by nature. He is subject to the action of universal forces of fate, over which he has no control. So man's life is governed by all the circumstances, individual as well as cosmic. And these are the ones who shape his activities. Now this is the fate of, this is the condition of an ordinary man, common man, who is subject to the laws of nature. Although there is a deep-rooted soul in him, but the soul is not yet free of nature to exercise his own choice. That is the way in which we normally live, and we think that we are really acting with a free choice. We talk of freedom of expression, but really speaking, there is no freedom of expression for us. The true freedom of expression comes only when it springs up from the depths of our soul. When the soul is the driving force, then what it expresses is the true freedom. we hardly have that true freedom. We are governed mostly by the laws of nature. But greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of his fate. What is the balance? Nature and fate compelling the free choice of man. It is that balance which can be changed, which can be reversed, which can be shaped, molded by the greater spirits. When the greater spirit comes into play, he doesn't care about nature, about fate, because he lives in the freedom of the spirit, and it is the spirit which will govern all his actions. Now, why is the poet bringing out these metaphysical aspects in the discussion? Savitri is supposed to do yoga. That is what the book says, the book of yoga. And the poet is talking of nature, fate, free will, greater spirits, ordinary man. Why? What is the context? What is the logic that the poet is introducing these ideas here? The yogi is insisting that these are important aspects and they must be kept in mind. Well, from a purely literary point of view, an epic is generally a poem with many themes, many aspects of life being described in it in many ways. It will take any particular incident and around it, it will give associated facets of life, collective as well as individual, of nature, of gods, of demons, of occult powers. Everything is brought into picture in an epic poem. That is what we have in all great literary epics. Ramayana, for instance, is extremely rich in that respect. For instance, we had an episode where the poet describes 7 types of birds flying at different heights. And when it comes to a particular bird, in this case Sambati, the vulture, who could soar high up in the sky, very high, and it is from that height he could see things around him, and it's from that height he could locate where Sita could be, and it is that knowledge which he gives to the concerned. So he says, from sparrows all the way up to the vulture, there are grades of birds. And Sampati takes very proudly, I belong to that category which flies at the highest level. And from that height I can see everything very clearly, very distinctly. Now, the purpose of the poet to bring out this particular description of 7 types of birds is an epic element in poetry. It is not directly connected with the storyline, but it gives you a kind of a richness to the theme that here is an individual who can really rise to a very high level, and from that level it can see things around and bring the necessary knowledge. In the same way, in Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost, we had descriptions of fixed fate and free will. The description is very brief, hardly a few lines, But he does introduce the metaphysical theme of fixed fate and free will, because it is in the context of this fixed fate and free will that the fall had to take place, that the forbidden fruit was eaten and the consequences had to be borne. So the poet has suggestively indicated the metaphysical aspect of fixed fate and free will. In the present context, in Savitri, why is the poet talking about fate, nature, greater spirits? What the context of is bringing those issues into picture. This is not without meaning. This is not without any purpose. He is preparing us already how human Savitri has to get ready to become an initiate in yoga. That she has to start yoga and acquire the necessary power for which she has taken the birth. She is human, she is man, so to say, and she has to undergo through all these possibilities. But greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of its fate. Savitri is not man's hopes and longings only. She is more than man's hopes and longings. She has to rise to the greatness of a spirit by doing yoga. It is only when she rises to the greatness of a spirit that she can acquire the power to beat death. He has already indirectly, suggestively, very pointedly also indicated the purpose of what Savitri has to do. Savitri is a person who has taken upon herself full humanity. She has to keep aside the humanity aspect of it and allow her secret soul to emerge. Unless the secret soul emerges, she cannot do her yoga and do the work which she is supposed to do. That is the purpose. Let us read the lines again. Man's hopes and longings build the journeying wheels that bear the body of his destiny and lead his blind way towards an unknown goal. His fate within him shapes his acts and rules. His face and form already are born in him. His parentage is in his secret soul. Here, matter seems to mold the body's life, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his free will choice. This is the plight of a common man. Savitri is living under these conditions. Her human nature is of this kind at the moment, but at the same time, she is a greater spirit. But greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of his fate. Now this is the prolegomena for the book of yoga. That greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of his fate. In other words, when can this greater spirit reverse the balance? True, greater spirits can reverse the balance, but when? When can it make the soul the master of its fate? That is the question indirectly being put here. But greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of its fate. When? The answer is only when the greater spirit does yoga. So the poet is telling you straight away that look, if this has to happen, then the greater spirit must engage itself into yoga. Otherwise, there is no possibility. So that is the way in which the prefacing the book of yoga is done. Well, actually, the question is, fate governs all our actions, ordinary man's actions. We are bound to our svabhava, to our nature. Although there is something within us, the sacred soul, which prompts us, which compels us to do a few things, but we fail, we succumb. We do not rise always to the occasion. One particular instance which is very famous in this context is, of course, of Arjuna. Arjuna was on the battlefield, full of confidence to win the war, but suddenly something happened and his spirit succumbed. It could not rise to the occasion, and Arjuna practically refused to fight. He did not want to pick up his Gandiva. The bow and arrow would not come out from his hand. At that point of time, Krishna had a problem. For Krishna, the higher power, Arjuna was necessary. Then he does rise to the occasion, lifts up the bow and arrow and shoots at the enemy. That was necessary for his work to be done. Therefore, he works upon the nature of Arjuna, upon his svabhava. He tells him, look, this is a weakness in you. You are a Kshatriya. This is an occasion, a holiday of fight, and you cannot shun away from this holiday. You must enjoy it. Pick up your weapon and shoot out. Arjuna is prepared by Krishna to undertake this task. Later on, he is also told that after all, the enemy was already killed by Krishna himself. The occult battle was already settled, and Arjuna had to be only an occasion, a pretext, a cause to remove the enemy on the physical plane. This was necessary. He had to be only nimitta matra. This is what Krishna told Arjuna. Be the nimitta, be the occasion, and do your work. I have already killed these people. They no longer exist. But you have to do your action. So this is what Krishna tells Arjuna. The job is already done by me, but you have to be my instrument. He works upon Arjuna. He works into the nature of Arjuna, his svabhava, and makes him ready to take up the weapon. In other words, fate cannot be fulfilled without human action. Here the human action is the action by Arjuna. Fate that the enemy has already been killed is fixed. The doer of all these things is the Supreme Himself. Everything is arranged already. Arjuna has to become the instrument. Fate is fixed, and therefore Krishna has to work upon Arjuna's nature. Now, in the same manner, here in Savitri, we see that in the beginning, Savitri is in a complete human state. She has fully the human nature in her. Her svabhava has not fully emerged. She has the advanced knowledge of the death of her husband. But she does not know what to do, how to face that moment, what line of activity she should take. She has no inkling, no idea, no clue to do anything. She has become kind of helpless also. She argues with herself this way and that way from many angles, but she finds that really she has no solution because she is in the human state. Greater Spirit this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of his fate. Savitri has to rise to the greatness of a spirit in this human condition. For that to happen, the first thing which she gets is calmness. She finds herself helpless. Nobody there to come to her aid. Neither her relatives, people in the forest, the surroundings, the gods around, nobody is there to come to her help. She is grieving that tomorrow my husband is going to die. Yet out of that great human grief, there is something which happens in Savitri, and she becomes grief's calm self, prashant, her sorrow, her dukkha, everything becomes absolutely calm. There is a kind of a shanti, and in that shanti, she has already acquired a yogic poise to receive the necessary injunction from the highest source. So, her nature has already been prepared from that angle to face the eventuality. Let us read the whole passage once again. Fate followed her, forcing immutable road. Man's hopes and longings build the journey wheels that bear the body of his destiny and lead his blind will towards an unknown goal. His fate in him shapes his acts and rules. His face and form already are born in him. His parentage is in its secret soul. Here, matter seems to move the body's life, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his free will's choice. But greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of its fate. So, let us move on to the opening passage. We will see a couple of more lines than what we read last time. But to get the continuity, let me read the whole passage again. Fate followed her foreseen immutable road. Man's hopes and longings build journeying wheels that bear the body of his destiny and lead his blind will towards an unknown goal. His fate within him shapes his acts and rules. His face and form are already born in him. His parentage is in a secret soul. Here, matter seems to mold the body's life, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his free will's choice. But greater spirits, this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of its fate. This is the mystic truth our ignorance hides. Doom is a passage for our inborn force. Our ordeal is a hidden spirit's choice. Anarchy is our being's own decree. All was fulfilled the heart of Savitri, flower sweet and adamant, passionate and calm, had chosen and on a strange unbending road, forced to its issue a long cosmic curve. So the yogi poets were describing the compulsion of fate. Against that compulsion of fate, what the greater spirits can do. And in that context, he is bringing out the nature, the character, the firmness, the determination of Savitri. All was fulfilled, the heart of Savitri, flower sweet and adamant, passionate and calm, had chosen and on a strange unbending road, forced to its issue in a long cosmic curve. It is Savitri who is forcing the issue. She is already described as the greatest spirit. She is not here to force the issue. Her heart is calm and passionate and adamant, firm, inflexible, unmoving. And her strength is there, which can even make the road bend the way she would like it to bend. In other words, in this particular passage, we already have the native spirit of Savitri coming out in its greatness. She is going to make things happen the way she would like them to happen. Fate is there, but she can prove herself to be mightier, stronger than fate. This is the whole thrust of the opening passage of the book of Yoga. Now, in order that she has her will exercised the way she would like things to happen, she has to do yoga. So in that sense, this is a very beautiful introduction, a preface to the book of yoga itself. Savitri is getting now ready to launch herself on yoga, on the yogic path. She does not know how to begin with. That will happen. But the yogi is already seeing the way things will happen. And therefore he is telling us right in the beginning, well, here is Savitri, a greater spirit, and it can reverse the path. It can change the balance of things. It can make the soul the artist of its fate. Soul the artist of its fate. Savitri has to acquire divine power, the power of the Mahashakti in her soul, and then only the unbending road can be bent the way she would like it to bend and make it move on her own path. So fate followed her, forcing a mutable road would again mean that, well, it is Savitri who is going to willing a certain course of action to happen, and she will make them happen, and fate will be bound to follow that road of Savitri. But as I said earlier also, this has become prominent, has come into focus, because Narad has already told her about the death of Satyavan 1 year after the marriage. Her soul got awakened with that word. And even before Narad had pronounced the statement that 12 swift-winged months are given to him and her, she had already told her father, to all the elders, to her mother, in the presence of Narad, yes, I have chosen Satyavan as my life's partner. And she asserts, this is done. She asserts, this is done. Her will is adamant, firm, maybe passionate also, but there is calm strength in those 3 words. This is done. Whether he is poor, whether he is living in a forest, whether he has no royalty to match with my status, I don't care at all about those matters. They are not of any consequence to me. I have chosen him, and this is done. Narad has not yet revealed about the death of Satyavan. But something sprang up from the soul of Savitri, and she affirms her resolve. So, all was fulfilled. The heart of Savitri had chosen. Savitri had chosen this one, and now fate is going to fulfill what she has chosen to do. All was fulfilled. The heart of Savitri. Now this construction of these 4 lines is a little complex kind of a construction poetically. The prose sense is simply like this. Whatever the heart of Savitri had chosen, that was fulfilled. That is the plain sense of the passage. Whatever the heart of Savitri had chosen, that was fulfilled. Now this is statement coming right at the beginning for the canto, for the book of yoga. All was fulfilled. How? Fate will follow her road now, what Savitri has chosen. This is done. I don't care what is going to happen there. And she is going to follow that road. Everything is fulfilled in that sense. In terms of the story, we can say that Savitri was happy that in spite of the announcement made by Narad, everybody had agreed to what she had proposed. And in that sense, in the matters of family thinking, ideas, concepts, she won the battle. She won over her mother. Her father had no difficulty at all in accepting what Savitri had chosen, because he had already seen in his yogic vision what is standing behind all these events. His mother was perturbed. She had even started accusing the god of Narad. But Savitri is firm, and finally she resigns herself. Savitri's mother resigns to what Savitri had chosen to do. This is done. And in that sense, the heart of Savitri was fulfilled. That now she will be proceeding to live in the hermitage. She will be taken to the Shelva woods and left in the hermitage with her parents-in-law, with her husband, with all the sages of the woods, in the company of those holy people, in that greatness, she will be left there. And there, all that she had chosen to do, that will get fulfilled. And in that sense again, her strength's unbending road, will force the issue. Her strength will force the issue of fate, the death, which is standing across a greater thing to happen. A greater thing has to happen, and death is proving to be an obstacle. It is that which will be removed on the unbending road. All was fulfilled. The heart of Savitri had chosen on her strength's unbending road. How is Savitri's heart? The poet describes in 4 beautiful adjectives. Her heart is flower sweet. Her heart is at the same time adamant, firm, like steel, unbending, unyielding. It will not change, get swayed away with things around. Her heart is passionate in the sense that there is a full thrust of life in it, and she will abide by that. It is that life thrust which will carry her forward. But all these things, the sweetness, the flower, the adamantine nature of Savitri, her passion, all are founded on some kind of a luminous, mature, rich calm. The adhara of all her activities is some kind of a deep calm, and on that deep calm her actions move. So when she says, this is done, it is a very passionate statement. At the same time, it is a very firm statement that she is not going to change at all what she has chosen to do. And because of that, what is going to happen? The cosmic issue, the cosmic curve will take the course which Savitri will desire it to take. It is reinforced that the cosmic events, the universal events will follow her action. well, a much larger dimension than the individual is already introduced in this passage. Fate here is not for the sake of Savitri. Fate here is not for all those people, human people associated with Savitri, neither in the palace nor in the hermitage. But the relationship of this fate, of her action, of her strength, they are connected with the long cosmic curve. The entire course of the universal movement is what is going to be governed by this action of Savitri. Action based on calm, which is also passionate, which is also firm and unyielding, which is also soft like flower, sweet in its fragrance. All those things are already present in our nature, and it is that which will come forward and get built up in its yogic strength, and Savitri begins her yoga. Actually, we have here already indicated by Ashwapati, Savitri's father, even before Narad makes an announcement about the death of Satyavan. I will just read a couple of lines here, just one sentence, and see the connection between the opening passage of the book of Yoga and what Ashwapati saw right at the beginning of the entire development. He tastes Narad. There seems to be something ominous, well, something inauspicious, something which may not be acceptable to the immediate human perception. Still, he says, "You please speak." And he tells Narad, "If thou canst lose her grip, then only speak." Something is holding the course of events in its grip. If Narad has power, capacity to unloosen that grip, then only he is advised to speak out. And the fact that Narad does speak it out, it means that he has the capacity to unloosen the grip of fate. If thou canst lose a grip, then only speak. Perhaps from the iron snare there is escape. Our mind perhaps deceives us with its words and gives the name of doom to our own choice. Savitri has chosen something, and it is our mind which gives to it a doom. Perhaps it is not doom, it is something more than that. Something deeper is significantly concealed in it, and give the name of doom to our own choice. Perhaps the blindness of our will is fate. The blindness of our will is fate. We don't have the knowledge of how things are going to happen tomorrow. We are blind to the future. We don't have the vision, the sight to see the far events. And therefore we say, well, this is the work of fate. In that context, Ashwapati is telling Narad, if you can loosen the grip of that fate, then speak out. Narad takes a deliberate step and speaks out the truth and tells about the death of Satyavan. Savitri is firm. She says, this is done, finished. I am not going to change my decision at all. And then here we have essentially her strands unbending road forced to its issue, the long cosmic curve. So what Narad was told by Ashwapati, that is reiterated by the poet in this particular opening passage of the book of Yoga.